platformer genre of old and the characters that have come with it have been riding a roller coaster of indecision for the last 5 years. The announcement of the return of Crash Bandicoot sparked an amount of hope for these old characters that had been lost for a long time. The Insane Trilogy felt like a test. Would people show up for a type of game that has been gone for a long time? Would its sales be carried by nostalgia alone, or would it find itself gathering new fans? The remade trilogy was announced to have sold 10 million copies 2 years after its launch in 2017. A very impressive number for a few remade PlayStation 1 games. It seemed a safe bet to greenlight a new game, and so they did. Meanwhile, another familiar face was about to make a reappearance. In April of 2018, Activision, in collaboration with Toys for Bob, revealed the Spyro Reignited trilogy, another remake of 3 beloved games from the PlayStation 1 era. It was done about as faithfully as one could remake a game and was also very successful as a result. While we don't have exact sales numbers for Spyro's comeback, we do know that it sold 1 million in its first week, and based on some PlayStation trophy data, as well as it being on every platform, it's safe to say it fell somewhere between 6 and 10 million copies. A comparable performance to the Insane Trilogy that launched just 1 year earlier. These 2 trilogies of games selling this well were all the convincing fans needed to begin to expect we could get a new entry in each series, but Crash Bandicoot was first up to bat. It was revealed in June of 2020 that Crash Bandicoot 4 It's About Time would be launching in only 4 months' time. One double entendre in a trailer currently sitting at over 16 million views later, what could go wrong? The game launched to much praise. It retained the identity of Crash Bandicoot while also providing it a more modern feel, but its sales were incredibly soft in comparison to the Insane Trilogy. You could attribute this to value perception, release timing, and whether or not Crash's initial return's success was in large a product of mass nostalgia. The game was priced at $60 in the middle of fall, where there are always plenty of other options, but most notably a fall in which Sony and Microsoft were about to launch 2 brand new consoles, and Crash 4 didn't have a next-gen upgrade ready to go for launch. A lot of factors that could lead one to just wait for a sale, or an update utilizing their brand new console. Crash 4 and the Spyro Reignited trilogy were both developed by Toys for Bob. While they did crush it with both, there's no doubt that Activision likely had a level of apprehension in moving forward with a new Spyro game or Crash game when they could place those resources elsewhere. Which they did, starting with Vicarious Visions, who made the Insane Trilogy. They were combined with Blizzard to assist on Diablo, and Toys for Bob is now working on Call of Duty. That's how Activision feels about the future of Crash and Spyro. It's not exactly promising, but they had a little data to lead them to this decision. But what about some of the other Sony platforming mascots? Where is Sly Cooper? It had been long rumored that Sly Cooper was going to be making a return in the form of a brand new game, coming from many sources, but nothing concrete. The Sly Cooper games have been stuck on PS3 in remastered form since their release 12 years ago, and the IP has been in an interesting spot ever since. Sly Cooper 4 Thieves in Time came out to alright reviews in 2013, but much like Crash 4, did not sell what was expected at all. Another contributing factor to why you haven't seen Sly in almost 10 years. There was supposed to be a movie coming out in 2016 that even got a full trailer. It ended up canceled after many delays, and Sly went silent until the last year or so. The rumored Sly Cooper game always just seemed a little too good to be true. Why now? Suckerpunch thankfully didn't let it go on too long before deciding to step in, something you don't see happen as often as it should. They not only confirmed that they themselves are not working on Sly Cooper, but also that no other studios are either, which is the most important piece for them to state. This upset some, but this is what is important to understand. For Sony, there is zero evidence or reassurance out there that either Suckerpunch or any other studio should work on Sly Cooper outside of maybe bringing the original games to modern consoles. Sly Cooper's never been their best seller, especially in the mascot platforming space. Ratchet & Clank and Jak and Daxter had much stronger sales numbers. The Sly games are very well done, but in 2022, it's hard to imagine how they can be modernized to tap into multiple demographics outside of its PS2 audience. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to know what Sly Cooper and friends look like if they were to try to use a more realistic art style and mix things up. A very good idea would need to arrive to justify trying Sly Cooper again. The main reason that Ratchet & Clank has stood the test of time is because of the difference in gameplay. Sly Cooper is mechanically a more simple game. Ratchet & Clank is a third-person shooter at its heart with clearly unending gameplay ideas and options. There's always going to be something new they can do with Ratchet & Clank. Sly Cooper will likely be resting for a long time. That said, the other main platforming duo from this era has plenty to offer. It just can't come back the way people want it to. Most of the industry is skeptical of trying to bring back these old platforming mascots. The skepticism mostly stems from the efforts made to make sequels that fit the mold of the old games, but Jak and Daxter is the perfect franchise to leave this mold. It's another third-person shooter like Ratchet & Clank, but with much more room for refinement. The hunger for more is there. A group of devs have recently completely reverse-engineered the coding language Naughty Dog used to create the first game. They decompile the game's code into a more accessible, readable code, and then recompile it while extracting the game's assets so they can modify them. They then repack the assets into a form their native PC port can use. If remakes or remasters of the original trilogy aren't in the cards, then it seems the fans are on it. This isn't an emulation, this is a completely native PC port running at 4K 60 frames per second. It's an incredible feat. When you hear people talk about the idea of Naughty Dog revisiting Jak and Daxter, they usually say it would be a waste of talent. Something you will also hear when talking about Suckerpunch going back to Sly. It's not an unpopular opinion that the studio's talent and scope is so much bigger than the platformers of this classic nature, but it can be oh so much different than that. Jak has much more human characteristics about him, so it would be easier to bring him into a new light and make an adjustment to the art style. As we know, after Uncharted 3, Naughty Dog was considering making a new Jak and Daxter game. They conceptualized what a more realistic looking Jak and Daxter could look like, and it was so fitting. The transition to a more hybrid art style between Uncharted and Jak and Daxter can work. Most of these images are within a book called The Art of Naughty Dog. What is also in this book is concept art of a sci-fi game they wanted to make. It was about a city built around a mysterious hole in the ground that the player would be exploring. If this doesn't look like a natural progression of Jak and Daxter anyway, then I don't know what is. If you put these characters in this world in an art style that gets partway to photoreal, somewhere between Jak 3 and meeting a little bit closer to Uncharted 4, then you have your look. And as Uncharted was a progression of Jak and Daxter, the same can work in reverse again. If you take Uncharted 4's cover-based third-person combat system and turn it up to 12 with sci-fi weaponry, double jumps, and just more exaggerated movements like Jak has, with that alone you have something unique. The notion that Naughty Dog is too above Jak and Daxter doesn't apply to this. You take the art style as far as it can go. If anything, it would be a really good challenge and a chance to step away from the type of grounded gameplay that are Uncharted and Last of Us. I think we could all use a break anyway. The creativity and tech that could be applied to playing as Jak 20 years after his debut could be taken very far with the right ideas. It could even work for a very refreshing multiplayer mode if you want to take it even further. That part will never happen. You have the longer rolls from Jak, more collaborative attacking with Daxter since technology would probably allow it, and bringing the hoverboard from Jak 2 and 3 as well as tons of other gameplay mechanics into the mix. Whenever playing Enslaved Odyssey to the West, I always wondered how much further some of these ideas could be taken on newer hardware, and that was 12 years ago. This also allows Naughty Dog a chance to try something new with storytelling. Jak 1 through 3 had meaningful storytelling worked into them from the beginning, but Naughty Dog, if you haven't noticed, has since gotten a little bit better at this, especially with character development. It would feel pretty great right about now to get a game from Naughty Dog that has Uncharted's humor and lightheartedness. Seeing how much more expressive Jak and Daxter could be on newer hardware amplifies that. You might ask yourself, why couldn't another studio do this? I think the only instance in which another studio should touch Jak and Daxter is if it's just going to be another platformer following the original game's roots as a direct continuation. But if something that feels like less of a sales risk is going to happen, like completely reinventing the game and doing it justice in all areas, it can only be Naughty Dog. If they ever bring these characters back again, it has to be a showcase that intrigues the masses, not exclusively the fans of Jak and Daxter on the PlayStation 2. A lot of devs could pull those 3 games off now, but only its original dev can make it something that needs to be experienced.